Greetings! Today I'm going to show you a toy tool that I've made yesterday, and the cool thing about it is I made it without leaving my room, so I made it literally out of miscellaneous pieces of junk that I had lying around. And yeah, it's a little table, so it's hugely underpowered, but it's good enough for cutting 3-4 mm wood or PCBs or stuff like that. So yeah, let me take it apart and show you how I made it. As you can see, the whole thing is made mostly out of wood, and it's powered by this motor here. This is a 24-volt motor from a printer, and yeah, it's good enough. I mean, the whole thing is hugely underpowered, but as I said, it's good enough for cutting small things. The motor is held onto this block, but maybe let me just undo a couple of screws and show you how it comes apart. The saw actually comes apart from the table, and that's so I can maybe change the blade or change the belt. So the table is just a piece of hardwood. It's stiff enough, and I've got those supports over here that hold it in place. The whole thing was built without any plans. I was just basically looking at what I've got lying around and what I want to achieve, and making the two fit together. And this is the table as a separate piece. The whole thing is just glued using wood glue, nothing else. It's stiff enough. Over here you can see there is a slight cutout that was yeah, an afterthought, misengineering, because it was rubbing on the belt. And here is the saw. So there's a couple of interesting things on here. So when I first wanted to make one of those, I bought those blades. I bought those on eBay for £1 or something. They come as a set of 6 blades. There's plenty of them on eBay. But yeah, after they came, I realized that they are so small that in order to get any sort of use out of it, I'll need to put it on a shaft with a really small bearing in order to keep the clearance away, because otherwise what's the point if the bearing is big, and then you add a table on top of it, you're gonna have a millimeter or something of cutting surface. So I was looking for a cheap source of small blades, and I found it in an unexpected place, in a hard drive. So those are examples of what I used, and those two are not good, but for various reasons. This one's too brittle, and this one I busted the bearing because I was trying to press this out, but it doesn't want to come out. So now the bearing has got stops, and it doesn't want to rotate. You can feel it clicking. But anyways, those are the head arms from a hard drive, and those you've got something along those lines in every hard drive, and this has got really nice bearing over here, and it's really small. So the one I used is here. This one is made out of aluminium and is stiff enough. From what I've noticed, if you've got a bearing that the arm, that had only one head on the one arm, this is not as stiff. This one's rubbish material because I managed to break this off. It's really brittle. But if it has 2 arms like so, it was quite a bit stiffer. So I chose this one. It had a little bit of a counterweight, I guess, over here that I've milled off, sanded off with Dremel, and that formed my arm or bearing for the shaft. And I've screwed that onto a piece of aluminium angle, the angle was just a tiny bit too thick to fit in between the arms, so I sanded that down so it fits perfectly, and held it with two screws. Now that is attached to a block of wood. I've got the motor attached to the block of wood as well. I've made a cutout on a fret saw to hold it in place, and that's the whole thing. Originally I was going to have another piece of wood over here holding the motor, but it turned out it was too thin, and when I was trying to tighten it, the wood cracked. So then, as an afterthought, I found this clamp in my drawer, and I used this clamp to hold it in place, and it does it really well. The motor doesn't move at all. Originally, when I started, I wanted to make this to use as a drive belt. I wanted to use a belt out of a printer, like this. So there's plenty of them in a printer, moving the head around and moving all sorts of other gears and cogs and whatnot. And I thought, oh, perfect, I'll just cut it. They're quite long, so I'll just cut it to size, stick it together somehow and use that, and there will be no slippage because it's ribbed. That would have been ideal. But the sticking together bit became beyond my capabilities. I mean, I've tried gluing at an angle, layering, sandwiching it down, gluing something on top to hold it, give it extra support, using different kinds of glues. I've tried stitching it with thread and gluing at the same time. Nothing worked. I mean, I've spent like maybe 2 hours trying to stitch the belt so it held right back, but it's not possible. No glue wants to hold to it, and yeah, it was a failure. But then after, I mean, the stitching was my last attempt, and then the stitch ripped through the rubber after a couple of turns. Then I've tried loom bands. I've put a whole bunch of them on here. Surprisingly, they worked really well. As long as you didn't try to cut anything, because the moment you tried to cut something, that applied a force and they all snapped instantly. Idea, why don't I just wrap some thread around like so? And I did maybe, I don't know what's in here, 20 wraps, applying constant pressure. Something stretched a little bit, but it doesn't matter. Applying constant pressure around and then just tying a knot on the end. So there's basically lots of loops of regular thread, and you know what, that works amazingly well. I mean, the saw works. You could see that in the previous shot, but it doesn't slip. It's a really inexpensive, cheap and easy way to make a drive belt. I mean, single thread is not that strong, but when you put a bunch of them, try it for yourself. Take about 20 pieces of thread and try to rip through it. It's really strong. The second afterthought over here was this. So what I found, that if I apply too much pressure and manage to block the cutting wheel, what would happen, that it would start slipping on the motor side, and as it slipped, the thread tend to come off and would fall into a little gap between the cog and the motor body. And in order to stop that from happening, I mean, if I stop it, I won't. If it slips, yeah, it slips, but I don't want the thread to come off, because I had to re-thread it every time it happened, and that's not difficult to stop this actually. So I've put this little guide that's just a piece of copper wire stuck into the press fitted into holes that are made with a nail. If this ever stops, if it gets jammed, this basically prevents it from falling off the cog and holds it in place, and that's it. There was quite a bit of work that I had to do over here to keep this, to keep it wobble free and keep it straight and whatnot. Here is the disc, the saw blade, and those things, as I said, they come in a pack of 6 and they come with a little mandrel. The hole over here is exactly 6mm, so it's fit to fit a M6 screw and tighten it, and you're ready to go. I mean, you don't need them. You can take a M6 screw instead of a mandrel, tighten it with a nut, put it in your drill and get on with your cutting, which is great. But the inside diameter of the bearing from the hard drive, it was like 4.3, 4.4, and actually every single one of them is different. So it depends which hard drive you take it out of, that you'll have a different size. But the problem was, in terms of the bearing, the biggest screw I could fit in was M4, which is like so. M5 wouldn't fit, and possibly it's some sort of imperial size, but I haven't got an easy access to imperial screws. I had to stick with the M4 screw, and to stop it from wobbling, I had a little piece of aluminium pipe that was just exactly 6 mm outside diameter, and the inside was about 3 mm. So I drilled through it to make the inside just big enough for the screw. I actually threaded it so it fits really snugly, and then I sliced off a small piece, pressed it in here and sanded it down flat with the surface of the disc, so it keeps the disc dead on center and dead straight. Again, this came out of a printer, and the hole inside this cog was just a tiny bit too small for the M4 screw. So again, I actually, instead of drilling it, I threaded it. That gave me a tighter fit, and there's another nut holding it in place. Nice little tool. By all means, it's not a awesome tool. It clogs and stops, and it's easy to mess it up. But for little things, if I want to cut something, what it really is really useful for is when you want to cut two pieces and you want to join them at a straight angle. I mean, normally I was cutting this with just a handsaw, and this is really neat and cheap way to make a nice enclosure for some little electronic gadget. But in order to keep it nice, you need really 90-degree angle on the cut. Using a scroll saw doesn't work that well for this sort of thing. The edge is not straight enough, and then the glue doesn't hold that well, and all that kind of stuff. But with this, if I cut it, yes, it's slow, but it's not much cutting really, so you know, it does the job. That's about it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe I'll inspire you to make your own one, possibly even better. This is what, as I said, this is what I've managed to cobble up without leaving my room. So it was all junk that I had actually lying around in one of my junk bins or a drawer or somewhere. So I've managed to basically source this from stuff lying around. So it's a free tool. All it took is a little bit of work. So hope you enjoyed this little video. I hope I've inspired you to make something similar. And yeah, that's all for this one. Take care.